Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.
Hi, everybody. It's Rita again. Apparently, I wasn't live on Facebook, and now it's 2:18. I apologize for being so late. Glitches. They're fixed now, hopefully, so we should be live on Facebook and then on YouTube as well, as we are every Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My apologies for being tardy today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, now that we're live, I thought we were live, but now we're officially, officially, let me wash my hands. Every time you see me messing around like that, I know it's time to wash my hands. Now that we're officially live, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, if you have any travel stories, if you're a recruiter, if you're a company that recruits travelers, tune into the Travel Nurse channel. We post frequently. We're live Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we love chatting about all things travel, all things healthcare. So I'm going to repeat myself for anybody that caught me on YouTube a few minutes ago because it didn't hit the Facebook Live. We are talking about the IDIs, the travel practices of IDIs. And that sounds silly, but I thought maybe you remember it a little bit. And if you're a traveler, if you're a nurse traveler, a clinical specialist, if you're a therapist or a tech, all of these wonderful fields in the healthcare realm travel, and there's a need for travelers in all kinds of states around the United States, actually internationally as well. So IDIs are very, very important to practice, particularly if you're a traveler. I mean, they're important if you're a healthcare worker in general, but particularly important for the traveler because you're under special contracts. You're there to help. You're kind of like the cavalry in the health care realm. And so these are the IDIs. I wrote them down. Flexibility. See that ITY? Adaptability. Positivity. There's another one. It's compassion. All healthcare workers should have compassion. But flexibility with your schedule. Adaptability with the unit and or multiple units that you're going to. And positivity. Even when things look grim, you can still be positive. Just like all of us in COVID, you know, our businesses are taking a hit, our families are maybe ill, or some of us have had terrible tragedies due to the COVID. You've got to find something positive, you know, whether it's the weather or a friendship or find something to be positive about. And so I think those are pretty self-explanatory, those IDIs: flexibility, adaptability, positivity. I'll just hold them up for a second. And then, of course, compassion. Healthcare workers need to be compassionate because we are the helpers. You know, we are dealing with people not at their best. Life and death sometimes, and pain many times, fear, all of these things. So flexibility. When I'm talking about flexibility for a traveler, you may have planned on something in your contract with a hospital or clinic, and they wanted you to do 5 8-hour shifts, and then you arrive and they go, we've switched to 10-hour shifts, so we prefer you do 4 10-hour shifts. So if you can be flexible, be flexible. They're not meeting the letter of the contract based on a 5-day work week with 8-hour shifts. But if you can be flexible, you should. And just addendum your contract. Talk to your recruiter and addendum your contract. That shows that you're there to help and to try and work things out with them. I had a nurse, oh, here's anonymous. These are normally 13-week assignments, correct. Travel assignments are normally 13-week assignments, but I only want to do 26 weeks per year. Are there any times of the year that clients may have more needs than other times? Anonymous, yes, there are. But I only want to do 26 weeks per year. Yes, there are. And contracts are often fashioned to the specific needs of the client and to the specific needs of the nurse and or allied person that's traveling. 26 weeks, traditionally, you sign up for 13, and then say you signed up for 13 90 days ago, right? And you're in the process of working at a hospital in another state, and partway through that assignment, you know, somebody gets ill or breaks a finger or moves on to another position, and they go, you know, we have an opening. Do you want to re-sign up for the next 90 days, the next 13 weeks? And there's your 26. But actually, it's Paul King writing in here. I thought it was anonymous. He's saying, I only want to do 26 weeks. He means he's heard of people going, I like traveling, but I want to go for half the year. I don't want to go for 1/4. So you could talk to your recruiter and discuss the places that you're interested in going. And if you're a nurse, maybe you're a tele, med surg, and ICU, maybe you've been flexing into all those areas. Some hospitals employ flex nurses, and they rotate between tele, ER, ICU, med surg, tele, ER, ICU, med surg. So they go on any given day to wherever they're needed. And if you're one of those nurses, you are really valuable, because top of the line needs are almost always going to be ICU and other critical areas like ER and telemetry, and even med surg. They are very, very busy. They usually have a lot of acute patients in med surg. So if that's you, and you talk to the recruiter and say, I've been dying to go to Texas. There's relatives there. There's so much I want to do. My favorite place to travel is Texas. Can you get me a 26-week assignment? And they will do their darndest to do that, because they're very busy in Texas, and it's certainly a possibility. Thanks, Paul, for bringing that up. So you may have to wait. You may have to wait. They say, say you were talking to your recruiter in September and you wanted to start a 26-week assignment beginning November, and they say nothing's coming up until after Thanksgiving. Okay, you may have to wait, but at least you'll get your 26 weeks. So adaptability, flexibility. We talked about flexibility. Adaptability comes in handy when, say you arrive on a unit and you were expecting a certain kind of charting, and somebody made a mistake, or maybe things changed between the time you applied for that assignment and the time you arrived at the hospital or whatever facility you're working at. So the type of charting was one. They were using one, and they've changed. Say they were using Kronos, or say they were using whatever, all the different kinds of charting out there, and now they've switched over to something else. And so that's a little disappointing, but you've done 2 or 3 different kinds of charting in your career, and you can adapt. You would just let them know, I contracted several, 5, 6, 7 weeks ago, and you were doing this kind of charting, and now you're doing this kind of charting. Can you give me some extra training? Is there a class I can take? Is there a website I can go to prepare myself for that charting? Because I wasn't expecting that. And of course, they're going to work with you. They want you. They've signed you up for 13 weeks. So you're the IDI you're providing is adaptability. And you may be doing it with a smile, and that's positivity. And that's something that is really, it's not something you can learn. What happened to my camera? My camera moved. Sorry, folks. Come here, camera. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Okay. Hello. So positivity is not something you learn in a book. Positivity is putting your best foot forward and leaving your troubles at the door when you enter the job space, and the need for you to be flexible, the need for you to be adaptable. You thought you were getting 8-hour shifts, now they're 10-hour shifts. You thought you were getting 12-hour shifts, now they're 10-hour shifts. You thought you were working full-time, three 12s a week, and now they're asking you almost every week for a day of overtime. So you've grinned and you've bared it, and you've done it with a smile. And if you really can't, if they're asking you after working 3 shifts in a row, and you don't, hi Gollum, Gollum's checking in on Facebook. I'm very well, hope you're well too. My wrist is healing. I've shrunk down to a smaller brace, and I'm excited. It's getting better. They told me it would take a year, but I'm actually, let's see, September 3rd, October 3rd. I'm almost at the 3-month mark, and I've made a lot of progress. So personally, I'm really good. Travel Nurse Channel is really good. A lot of nurses are tuning in. Clients are tuning in. Clients, please call me. We have lots and lots of space for ads, and you may find your next best nurse, your next best travel person here by our connection. No red tape. They're watching. You advertise, they call you. Next best employee, next best traveler. So all is well. I wish everybody a happy Halloween. Yeah, those 26-week assignments Paul King was talking about. Happy to see you as well. Maybe one of these days we'll meet. Gollum is across the world. He is in Bangladesh, and I'm sitting here in Southern California. Yeah, it'll be so nice to meet you one day, Gollum. So 26-week assignment is interesting, and it makes me think of a friend of mine that I met. She's a interventional radiology tech, and when I met her years ago in this hospital, we were both working in that unit, she was a traveler. And she started off on a 13-week assignment. She extended, and what happens is at about the year mark, Gollum is asking about nurse-patient ratios. We can talk about that a little bit. It's going to vary, Gollum, depending on what area you're working in. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So this interventional radiology therapist was a traveler, and she extended, and usually at about the year mark, there is a caveat there for the hospital to either bring in another traveler if they still need a traveler. At the year mark, they either have to hire or bring in another traveler. Well, they brought in my friend Tony, and she's like running the show over there now. She's probably the lead or the director. She is an interventional radiology technician. She's fabulous. So when I met her, she was a traveler, and now she's a big cheese over there. Okay, Gollum is asking, what is the nurse-to-patient ratio for travel nurse positions? That is usually determined by the Board of Nursing, the BRN, the Board of Registered Nursing. And it's going to vary for the other areas, for the technicians and the therapists and so forth. But for nurses, it's usually 1-to-1 in the ICU. Could be 2-to-1, depending on that patient's acuity. It could even be 2 nurses to 1 patient if they're really critical. Maybe it's a very critical CV ICU, cardiovascular ICU, or just a very demanding patient with maybe a terrible motor vehicle, or even with the COVID patients that are very, very sick and require almost nonstop nursing. So it's generally 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, and occasionally 2 nurses to 1 patient. So when I'm saying 1-to-1 is 1 nurse, 1 patient, or 2-to-1, 2-to-1 would be 2 patients, 1 nurse, 2 patients, 1 nurse, and then occasionally it can be 2 nurses to 1 patient if they are very, 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 very intense and need a lot of intervention and care. In the ER, I don't really know how they do it in the ER. I really don't. They're moving parts in the ER. So you may be admitting one patient and working with another patient. Somebody may take that patient over. You're admitting another patient. So I don't know. But I do know that ER nurses take care of a lot of patients per shift. Whereas in the ICU, you stick with that patient throughout a 12-hour shift. And on the telemetry units, that again depends on the acuity level, is usually something like 4 to 1. So 4 patients to 1 nurse. Yeah, that's usually how that works, 4 to 1 patient ratio in the telemetry unit. And on a med surg, it might be a little different. It might be 4 or 5. I don't think it would be more than 6. 6. Is that 6? Okay, 6 patients to 1 nurse is kind of pushing the envelope regardless of what level they are. Hospitals, patients are very acute. So I would say 4 to 1 is more what the Board of Registered Nurses, the BRN, recommends. And I am much more familiar with the state of California. It could vary in other states, but it's not going to be too different. Let's see. In long-term facilities, it would be different. In skilled nursing, they work more of a team. So there would be an RN leading the team, then an LVN doing probably more treatments. And so you have let's start here. Okay, RN leading the team, LVN assisting the team in treatments and passing meds and checking blood sugars and so forth, and then CNAs and patient care assistants doing a lot of the bedside stuff, getting to the bathroom, getting them fed, helping them with activities of daily living. And then, of course, on days, you have all kinds of therapists, because skilled nursing traditionally will take care of a lot of patients needing rehab. You know, hip surgeries or injuries, knee surgeries, various things, maybe just weakness, terrible weakness from whatever disease process or cancer may have happened, and they're in the skilled nursing to get their strength back. So they will be meeting with potentially physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech pathology sometimes, and other therapies. There's art therapy, there's music therapy. A variety of therapies can occur too. But the nurse to patient ratio in the acute setting is generally 1 to 1 in the ICU, generally 4 to 1 in med-surg and tele, or 5 or 6 maybe in med-surg. In long-term facilities, it's going to vary. Assisted living, again, it's going to vary. There's always a head nurse, a nursing director, a healthcare team director. But when patients are pretty independent, they just need things like their meds reviewed, which can they take on their own, what might they need help with. Say they have chronic emphysema and they do nebulizer treatments. Even though they're assisted living and they're, you know, able to dress and bathe and eat and move around, they still might need a little guidance with their meds or a little assistance with their oxygen or their nebulizer treatment for breathing, things like that. So you need a nursing director and a healthcare director to make sure that those treatments go smoothly. So I would say that nursing director could have many, because she's just providing routine but a minimal amount of care. She might direct her LVNs to check vital signs once a shift, or her CNAs to help with housekeeping and light housekeeping on a regular basis. But mostly she's making sure her patients get their treatments and their meds appropriately and that they stay healthy. So she may have dozens, literally dozens, maybe 30 or more patients under her direction. So it varies in facilities, but not too much in the acute setting. The acute setting is set up by the Board of Registered Nursing of the state, and it doesn't vary too much from state to state, but most familiar of course, with California, which is the state I've been in for a long, long time, for like over 30 years. So what else did I want to say? I wanted to say, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about the itties of traveling. How do I go here? There we go. There's me and my little marionette nurses. Flexibility, ITY. Adaptability, ITY. Positivity, ITY. And then I threw in compassion because healthcare workers are caregivers, and care means compassion and understanding and patience. Patience, that's a hard quality, but we always have to work on it. And passion. You really have to really be committed to your specialty, to your nursing specialty or to your allied specialty, and practice those itties. I don't know what you'd like to talk about. We talk about so many things, and many of them are priorities for some people. Pay is a priority for some people, and we've talked about that quite a bit over the last few weeks. There are some states that traditionally pay higher. California is one of them, and oftentimes San Francisco has one of the best pay rates. It's a little higher than Los Angeles. It is a very expensive city, so they almost need to pay you a little more to be able to stay in that city and manage. Excuse me. Los Angeles pays pretty high. Texas pays pretty high. The state of Washington has good rates, and they don't vary that much. Many travel assignments have that range, you know, between high 40s and high 50s an hour, and there's a lot of factors that influence it as well, and things that you should consider that as you look for your assignments and where you want to go. What's the most important thing for you? Is it the pay? Is it the location? Is it the amount of flexibilities that's going to be required of you? Most travel assignments will require some amount of floating. There's certain areas, if you are strictly an ER nurse, you probably cannot float to ICU or tele. So you will float depending on the trauma level of the hospital and how big the hospital is. They may have, there's triaging part of the ER, there's the patient care and the ER, and then they might have like a fast track or an urgent care section of the ER. So you may rotate in between those areas of the ER, but the ER department and ED nurses traditionally don't float per se. But ICU nurses could float between other ICUs. So it could be surgical, medical, cardiac ICU, surgical, medical ICU. What are there's burns? That would be a specialty. You would not be floated into a burn unit if you did not have burn experience. So talk to your recruiter about floating and what the expectation is. So traditionally tele nurses, and there are levels of tele, right? There's the 1 or 2 days post open heart surgery tele, and then there's tele, somebody that's had a long-standing arrhythmia without symptoms, but they're watching. Maybe it's atrial fibrillation, maybe it's occasional PVCs. So they watch them. They're admitted for some other reason, but they have a known cardiac implication that warrants them being on telemetry monitoring. So you need to talk to your recruiter or your clinical resource person when you're scheduling an assignment. You might be more med-surg tele than tele in the cardiovascular realm of tele, So your recruiters and your clinical resource people, you need to have discussions with them about what you are capable of doing. For example, for many years, I had a pretty varied background. I had started my career in dialysis, and then I went to acute dialysis. Then I became an ICU nurse, and then after I had my first child, I was away from it for 7 months, so I did tele, I did home health. I managed a schedule that was really conducive to being home as much as possible with my small child, and then I had another child, and so I had all these different practices that I had done, but I didn't want to go back into the advanced practice, the critical care, the acute critical care. I didn't have ER, but I had a lot of critical care, and I didn't feel comfortable going back to it part-time. So I stuck with med-surg and tele. Sometimes I'd float to pediatric, I'd float to psychiatric, I'd do home visits if that's what was needed. So I was working in these various areas of acute, but not critical. And that worked for me. And then when the kids were grown and so forth, I got a little bit more into critical, and I did a lot of recovery room, and sometimes they threw me in the operating room. but it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful career, and it still is. And I did long-term care, skilled, you name it, I did it. The only areas I didn't work, I did postpartum, did pediatric, not a lot. But the only areas I didn't, because they're very specialized, was the ER and labor and delivery. I stayed out of those areas. I didn't carry the qualifications or have enough, 1 or 2 years, I would say minimum, for those critical areas. I didn't have enough experience between education and nursing school to float to those areas, but I floated almost everywhere else. So had a lot of fun, I mean, it doesn't sound like fun to people that aren't healthcare workers, but we healthcare workers, most of us enjoy it very much. So what else? I do get questions sometimes about rapid relief and crisis. Those are assignments, they're usually shorter. They're not the traditional travel 13-week assignment. They're shorter. They come about when maybe a facility is anticipating a union strike or a nursing strike, or something like that. Or maybe, some horrific thing happened and they have to bring in a lot of travelers in the interim. I'm going to get a drink. So the thing with the rapid response, it is rapid. The recruiter could be calling you on a Friday to see if you can show up in a city on a Monday. And they need your help in the ICU, or they need your help in the ER. Something happened, I don't know, the roof fell in or something. Or, the union, they have to, they feel like they're backed up against the wall and they have to strike, and they're planning it next week on Monday. Could you respond? Could you be there in 48 hours or 3 days or whatever they're asking of you? Is your license ready to go for that city and that state? Whatever. And usually those rates are quite high. There's bonuses and so forth. If they promise you 4 days, whether you work 1.5 or 4 days, you get paid the 4 days and so forth. So those are little things that come up from time to time that may or may not work for you. It depends on how you work your regular job and how you manage your situation. If you have family or pets, all these things need to be considered if you're going to leave town and do rapid relief nursing or rapid relief tech. They might need respiratory techs. They might need radiology techs. They might need who knows what. If it's crisis, it's a crisis. Something's going down. Lab people, lab techs. So I knew a nurse that did the rapid relief a number of times. Probably no more than one, but I'm thinking of one. And he had a family and he had a regular job, and but he had a wife and a couple of sons. And when that opportunity came up, he was able to do it because his wife could step in. The children weren't infants at the time he was doing it, And his schedule, he knew his schedule, whether he was working for a company per diem or he's working for on staff. He could do his 312s, and he might have 3 or 4 days or more to be flexible with. So he could call his rapid relief travel company and say, hey, I'm available next weekend, or I'm available the next 4 days. Is there anything I could help you with? And if his license was good to go in more than one state, that allowed him to be a rapid relief nurse for that particular assignment. Other nurses travel a lot, and they have their favorite places to travel. So we'll just say Florida, Ohio, and Texas. Florida, Ohio, and Texas. And they have, and actually, Ohio might even be a compact state. So the compact states, the licenses are good for more than one state. So I don't know if I'm right or wrong about Ohio. But Florida, Texas, and Ohio, and they live in New Jersey. So there's your nurse. They can travel to 4. They carry licenses for their home state of New Jersey. They have a license for Florida because they've traveled there. They have a license for Texas. They've traveled there. And they have a license for, what did I say? Ohio. So they can go to like 4 or 5 states. Yeah. So there would be somebody that would be available for rapid relief and crisis pay and so forth. And then again, if you've done it once, your name is in with your recruiter, with the company that does rapid relief. And so they would call you from time to time when it came up. So they know you did it, and you did it successfully in the past. So that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about travelers needing to have the itties. Practice your itties. Flexibility, adaptability, positivity, and always, always, always compassion. So recently, I was a patient. Some of you may know. I broke my wrist pretty badly. And so part of my treatment after surgery was occupational therapy. And I had a wonderful therapist that I had known socially, and who my daughter, who wants to be an OT, had actually shadowed and was so impressed with, this wonderful OT hand specialist. And so I had a couple of treatments. She was wonderful. She taught me a lot. I'm still practicing my OT on my own now. And she had a small area in this rehab facility, this outpatient therapy facility. They had a pool. I didn't even see the whole facility. I would go to where I'd wash my hands or get a little treatment from one of the aides, and then sit with her, and she would put me through a whole bunch of exercises and practices. But and oftentimes I had her to myself. Sometimes there'd be 2 patients, sometimes there'd be 3 or more, one coming, one going, whatever. And I remember this one day. I'm going to talk to you about compassion and positivity, flexibility, adaptability. She had it all. She had it all. And she would always, whoever her patient was, I was one of them, the first thing well, because it's COVID and she's kind of a mask police, a self-proclaimed mask police. So if you're wearing your mask, I don't have a mask here to show you, but your mask can't just cover your mouth, can't just cover your nose. It has to cover your nose and your mouth and kind of seal. I mean, the whole idea is to keep the droplets away from others, right? So she was the mask police. If you walked through the door and you weren't wearing a mask, she'd just yell, mask! And then she trained her staff so well, they were all saying the same thing. They checked your temperature and asked the questions, then you sign in, you get your therapy. And then she always asked that you wash your hands. What qualities do you think are most important for the nurse in this role? The travel nurse. Yes. Oh, that's a great question. I'll be right with you, Gollum, on that. I just want to tell this story about compassion and positivity. So this occupational therapist would make sure you had your mask on, make sure you were healthy to come into the facility, and then would send you to wash your hands. Doesn't matter if you just took a shower. You walked or you drove, or you took a bus there, and you touched something. So wash your hands. Okay. Then you'd sit down, and the next thing she'd always say is, she might have been saying this even before you sat down in her care, is, how are you? How are you today? How's everything with you? Of course she wants to know about your injury, but she just wants to know how you are. Well, I was there one day, and there were 3 patients. One was finishing up. I was number 2, sitting in my chair, getting my therapy. I was already washed, masked, and getting my therapy. And a 3rd patient came in. And as he came in with his mask, and she sent him for the hand washing, and he got closer. So I think she always said, hi, how are you, when you arrived. But then when you got closer and came into her care, she'd call you by name, and she'd say, how are you doing today, Robert? I'm making that name up. And he said, and he was a big guy, he said, angry. I'm very angry. And she said, she said, I know you are, and I'm really sorry to hear that. So she heard him, and she was compassionate. And then the next thing she said, I thought was a wonderful thing too. Do you want to talk about it? Well, he talked about it on and off for several minutes. And I think that's good too. There's a release in saying what bothers you. And it turns out he was injured on the job, and it was not the first time. He'd already had surgery. It's a job he'd been doing for 30-something years, and he wasn't really getting the care he needed. He was in a lot of pain. They didn't let him know if he was eligible for another surgery. He just really, he just felt like he was getting the runaround. And on top of all that, he wasn't getting better, and he was in pain. So, and he was away from a job that he really liked, he was good at. So anyway, I just thought that was a good scenario to point out compassion and positivity. He did leave, and partway through his treatment, he did say to her, I'm sorry to lay all this stuff on you. And she said, no, it's okay. I understand. It's just wonderful, wonderful. Gollum is saying, what qualities do you think are most important for nurses in this role? Well, these are definitely important. The itties are important. Flexibility, adaptability, positivity, and compassion. But I do have some other things that I've written down. Yes. These are items I believe an ideal travel nurse possesses. I do believe it. They're dedicated, okay? They're dedicated, they're passionate, patients, they're patient advocates. They have attention to detail. They assess and they reassess, and they read the chart, and they talk to the team, and they don't let anything get through. Not a missed med, not a mistreatment, not a change in their patient, a change for the better, a change for the worse. They share that with the team. Attention to detail. They are reliable. They are reliable. You can reach them when you need to. You see them when they're supposed to be there. They don't disappear off the unit without talking to somebody in charge. They take the appropriate breaks. Every 4 hours, they take their 10-minute coffee break or 15-minute, whatever is being allotted in that state. They take their 30-minute lunch, and they come right back, and they continue to be dedicated, attention to detail, and absolutely reliable. They are patient advocates, okay? Patient care above everything else. If your charge nurse asked you to stop this or check on that, patient first. Then you can do that. And then they possess wonderful communication skills. So that's what I think, Gollum. I think those are top on my list. Of course, they're experienced and practiced, and nobody knows it all, and nobody likes to know it all. Every time I do that, I mess up my camera. I put the card in the wrong place. I must be tapping a wire. Gollum, nobody likes to know it all, but a practiced healthcare worker knows the expectations, right? An ICU nurse knows she's going to read monitors. She's going to take care of hearts. She's going to take care holistically, the entire body systems. She knows meds. She knows labs. She knows blood gases. She knows, there's many, many skills that come into play. But in addition to that, when something escapes her, a med she hasn't seen in a while, or a treatment she hasn't been exposed to, maybe it's been a long time since, I don't know, full body cast, maybe she hasn't taken care of a patient in a full body cast in a while. That's possible. Then she asks questions. She does research. She talks to the orthopedist, to the intensivist. So qualities that I think are important in a nurse traveling are qualities that any nurse would have, but if you're a traveler, you better darn have them, right? You need to be dedicated, have attention to detail. I can't tell you, attention to detail is so, so, so important. And that's why we shouldn't work more than the 12 hours, really, because you're just not as sharp at the end of a 12-hour shift as you are at the onset and in the middle. You need your rest, you need change, you need food and a different environment, and come back fresh again the next time. So attention to detail, and we help one another, So say you're taking care of a critical patient who's having a lot of cardiac issues. They also have diabetes. They also are on a blood thinner. They've got a bunch of problems, and you bring in a nurse or a COVID patient, multiple problems going on, and you bring in another nurse to, I don't know, hold the patient still while you adjust something or whatever, and that nurse happens to notice a funny color on their toe or a funny color on their dressing. You may not have seen it, and you say to her, "Thank you for pointing that out to me. I was so focused on their cardiac condition that I didn't notice their toe," right? So, so it's okay not to know it all and to work with your team, right? So, great question, Gollum. Great question. So, dear travelers, happy Halloween. Hello, recruiters and healthcare employers. We are here for you every week. Now, I'm going to go over the schedule again. We're live on Facebook and, YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Next week, I'll be out of town. I'll be in a couple of different towns, but I'll be going through the desert. I'm going on a road trip with my husband, and I'm not sure I'll be able to video for you, so it won't be live. I will try to do some postings on Facebook and YouTube, and if I can, I will do some pre-recorded broadcasts to keep you linked in with all the travel business that's going on in the country. Travelers are in big need. They're still needed in New York. I have a feeling we're going to have another surge. The COVID cases are up. The deaths aren't up, I don't think, but a lot of the young people, the college students, they're asymptomatic, some of them, and then they get tested and they're tested positive. And we're upon the flu season, so I think that could be careful, everybody. Wash your hands, wear your masks, stay in small groups of healthy people of 6. Continue your social distancing. If you have to go to the supermarket, be safe. We particularly healthcare workers and travelers. Take care of yourself. You're no good to anyone else if you get sick. So take good care of yourself. At any rate, so next week won't be a live week necessarily, but I will check in however I can with either a pre-recorded broadcast, and I'll be back the following Tuesday. So I'll be back in just a little over a week doing the live broadcast. Take good care of yourselves. Have a fun Halloween. Good luck, ER nurses. It can be pretty funny on Halloween, and accidents do happen. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you soon. I'm going to end the broadcast. Before I end the broadcast, I'll give you another commercial. If I can. Bye-bye.
Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.